Welcome to The Explainer. When most of us think of George Washington, we instantly picture this flawless marble statue, right? We see the stoic father of a nation, the seasoned general, the face staring back at us on the $1 bill. But today, we're going to look completely past all of that. We're heading back to the 1750s, back to a time when Washington was just this quiet, pale-eyed kid from Virginia with absolutely no formal education and no wealthy inheritance to fall back on. We're diving into an untold story, a wildly chaotic, literally near fatal youth that actually forged the man who'd go on to build a country.
4. Okay, I really want you to keep this number in the back of your mind because it represents the absolute unbelievable climax of our explainer today. We're going to find out exactly how a 22-year-old who, spoiler alert, had just experienced a devastating, humiliating failure, managed to walk out of the deadliest forest in America with 4 bullets passing straight through his coat. And he did it without a single scratch. Seriously, how does someone even survive that?
Section 1. The Impossible Wilderness Mission.
So to really understand that survival, we've got to start at the very beginning of his military career, in 1753. Just imagine being a 21-year-old land surveyor. You're confident, sure, but you were completely untested in war. And then, Virginia's governor, Robert Dinwiddie, hands you what is frankly a staggering mission. Step 1, ride hundreds of miles deep into a freezing, enemy-controlled wilderness with zero army behind you. No radio, no backup plan whatsoever. Step 2, find the French forces moving into British-claimed territory in the Ohio Valley and literally just tell them to leave. Step 3, somehow survive the ride back. Governor Dinwiddie picked Washington simply because he was physically tough and knew the woods. So Washington actually rode for weeks, delivered this bold message to the French commanders, and was politely but very firmly told no, they weren't going anywhere. And now? Well, now he had to get home.
Section 2. Ice and point-blank fire.
You see, the wilderness on his return journey wasn't just some scenic backdrop. It was an active, totally lethal threat. The whole American story came incredibly close to ending before it ever truly began. It's the dead of winter. Washington and his tiny party are trying to cross the Allegheny River on this crude, makeshift log raft. Suddenly, Washington gets thrown from the raft. He plunges straight into the freezing, pitch-black water. With all his heavy winter gear literally dragging him down, he had to fight a deadly, freezing current just to pull himself out and survive the night. And hey, if you think surviving a frozen river was enough for one trip, just hours later, things escalated again. A Native American warrior who was actually supposed to be guiding them suddenly turned, raised his musket, and fired directly at Washington from point-blank range. And he missed completely. 2 wild, near-death experiences back-to-back. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates Washington's character because he recorded both of these terrifying events in his journal with almost zero emotion. Just cold, factual restraint. A total refusal to be shaken.
Section 3. Disaster at Fort Necessity.
But as it turns out, emotional restraint wasn't going to save him from what was coming next. Fast forward a bit to 1754, Washington gets promoted to command Virginia militia forces, and he's sent right back to the Ohio Valley. And this is exactly where he makes a catastrophic tactical choice, one that leads him to the absolute abyss of his young career. He ordered his men to build this small circular wooden stockade called Fort Necessity. But his tactical choice was deeply, deeply flawed. He built it right in a clearing, completely surrounded by higher ground. Military experts later called it one of the absolute worst defensive positions a commander could possibly choose. The French response? It was simple and devastating. They, along with their allies, surrounded the fort, took the high ground, and just poured fire down onto Washington's trapped men through hours of relentless, pouring rain and thick smoke. The situation was entirely hopeless. Washington was completely outnumbered. His men were totally out of ammunition. And there was no relief coming, period. So at just 22 years old, he faced the crushing professional and emotional weight of total humiliation. He was forced to surrender. And even worse, in the chaos and the rain, he ended up signing a surrender document he didn't even fully understand. A document that essentially admitted responsibility for the death of a French diplomat. I mean, this was a monumental disaster. By all conventional logic, this really should have ended his career forever. But here is the absolutely crucial point. It's how Washington responded to hitting absolute rock bottom. As he signed that humiliating surrender document by torchlight, defeated, disgraced, his jaw was set, his hand was steady, and he quietly muttered a promise to himself. This is not how it ends.
It was a moment of quiet, unbreakable iron resolve. Section 4. The Miracle at Braddock's Ambush.
So, just 1 year later, in 1755, Washington is somehow back in the field. He's riding with British General Edward Braddock on a massive new military campaign into the Ohio Valley. But disaster strikes again. The British column walked directly into a devastating forest ambush. General Braddock was shot and killed. These professional, seasoned British soldiers panicked and fled in terror. Older, vastly more experienced men were dying everywhere. And right in the middle of this absolute slaughter, Washington. And here is that mind-blowing statistic from the beginning of our explainer. 4 bullets. 4 heavy musket balls tore directly through George Washington's coat as he rode through the frantic crossfire.
But wait, it doesn't even stop there. As he scrambled to organize a retreat amidst all this panic, not 1 but 2 separate horses were shot completely out from under him. He hit the ground hard, covered in dirt and gunpowder, only to immediately climb onto a 3rd horse and literally keep riding back into the fire. Which brings us to the final, truly miraculous number, 0. Despite 4 bullets tearing through his coat and 2 horses killed right beneath him, George Washington received 0 wounds. He remained entirely unharmed. While the British army literally collapsed around him, he calmly organized the retreat and even helped carry the dying General Braddock off the battlefield. When the smoke finally cleared, the survivors gathered around, covered in mud and blood, and they just looked at this 23-year-old Virginian with sheer awe. They started whispering a very specific word among themselves: providence, the protective care of a spiritual power. They genuinely believed that divine providence itself was shielding this unbreakable young man. God himself, they whispered, must have a bigger plan for George Washington.
Section 5. Forged in Fire.
As you can probably see by now, Washington's defining trait wasn't some natural tactical genius. It was his absolute refusal to quit. I mean, just look at how incredibly densely packed this timeline is. In 3 short years, he went from a freezing, near-fatal mission in the enemy woods in 1753 to that crushing, career-ending humiliation at Fort Necessity in 1754 to miraculously surviving the total slaughter at Braddock's ambush in 1755. This crucible of fire and failure rapidly forged his legendary resilience. He survived disasters that killed better-equipped, much older men all around him, and every single time he was knocked down, he got right back up.
Which leaves us with this incredibly provocative thought. The American Revolution was still 20 years away at this point, but the man who would eventually lead it was already built. We really have to ask ourselves, if a young man can survive freezing rivers, point-blank gunfire, total public humiliation, and an ambush that put 4 bullets through his coat, what can that same man do when you hand him an entire army? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Really keep this incredible crucible in mind the very next time you look at that marble statue.